I welcome you to my channel. Subscribe and listen to my new stories every day. The morning sun spilled into the kitchen where James sat, his eyes locked on a letter that had just arrived. He should have been at the airport, coffee in hand, waiting for his flight to Barcelona for a critical business meeting. Instead, he was grappling with the unthinkable. "Emily, have you seen my passport?" James called out earlier, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. From upstairs, Emily's response was faint, muffled by the walls between them. "Maybe it's in the study. Where you left it last." But it wasn't there. None of his usual spots turned up anything. Frustration bubbled as he rummaged through drawers and cabinets until the mail caught his eye, and with it, the letter that now held his world hostage. As he read, his pulse hammered in his ears. The letter was from the bank, confirming recent loan approvals, loans he never applied for. His mind raced. Loans? I didn't request any loans. The figures were staggering, enough to gut him financially. Emily walked in, her steps light and carefree. She hummed a tune, one that now sounded like the prelude to betrayal. "James, what's wrong? You're pale." Her voice was laced with a concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Emily, did you take out loans in my name?" His voice was low, controlled but teeming with an undercurrent of betrayal. "What? No, why would you even think that?" Her laugh was airy, dismissive. But her eyes darted away, a tell that James knew all too well. "And my passport? It's missing. I can't find it anywhere." His gaze was unyielding, trying to read her, the woman he thought he knew. Emily shifted, unease creeping into her posture. "James, really, you're being paranoid. Why would I need your passport?" But James wasn't convinced. The bank's letter lay on the table between them, a silent witness to the turmoil brewing. "I called the bank. They confirmed the applicant met them in person, Emily. They saw you." Her face blanched, then flushed with anger, or was it guilt? "So what? Maybe I needed the money." "You're always so tight-fisted, James. You wouldn't have helped me." Her words sliced through him. The finality of her admission was colder than he expected. "And where is my passport, Emily?" Silence hung heavily, charged with the weight of unspoken truths. Then, it all poured out, her words a chaotic cascade of confession and defiance. She was leaving him. Paris. There was someone else. James listened, each word a betrayal that tore through the fabric of their life together. By the time she finished, something inside him had shifted irrevocably. The woman he loved, the life he knew, all a mirage now scattered by deceit. "I'll be filing for divorce," James said, his voice devoid of warmth. He stood up, his chair scraping back with a sound that marked an end. "You won't see a cent of that money, Emily. I'll make sure of it." As Emily's face contorted with a mix of fear and anger, James walked away, his mind already churning with plans. Not just to reclaim what was his, but to ensure Emily regretted her treachery deeply and profoundly. As he stepped out into the crisp morning air, the initial shock gave way to a cold resolve. Revenge wasn't just a response, it was a necessity. He would reclaim his life, piece by shattered piece, and Emily would learn the cost of her deceit. The road to vengeance had just begun. James stormed through the bustling streets, his mind a whirlwind of fury and disbelief. Emily's confession echoed in his ears, each word a stab to his heart. But there was no time for pain, not yet. First, he needed answers, and he needed to secure what was left of his assets. His first stop was the bank, the place where Emily had boldly impersonated him. The air was crisp, almost biting, as if reflecting his own inner turmoil. Upon entering, he was greeted by the branch manager, a middle-aged woman with a practiced smile that faltered when she saw the hard set of James's jaw. "Mr. Walker, how can I assist you today?" she asked, her voice a calm contrast to the storm brewing in James. I need to see the surveillance footage from last week. The day the loans were approved, James demanded, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. The manager hesitated, her eyes darting to the phone. I'm not sure that. It's either you show it to me, or my lawyer will be asking instead, James cut in sharply, his gaze piercing. Minutes later, they sat in a small room, the monitor flickering to life. The footage was grainy, but unmistakably clear. There was Emily, chatting with a bank officer, signing documents with a flourish that burned James's eyes. I need copies of everything. The loan applications, the interactions, everything, James stated coldly, his eyes never leaving the screen. Of course, Mr. Walker. We'll need you to verify your identity, N. I'll take care of it. Just get me the copies. His interruption was curt, his authority unquestionable. Armed with a folder thick with betrayal, James's next step was clear. He needed to confront the man who had helped Emily unravel their life. The lover who had spirited her away to Paris. His research was quick, fueled by a mixture of adrenaline and a desperate need for retribution. A few calls revealed the lover's identity, Mark DuPont, a smooth-talking charmer with a penchant for luxury and a history of dubious financial escapades. Finding Mark wasn't difficult. He was a creature of habit, frequenting the same upscale cafe every afternoon. James found him there, lounging at a table, the very picture of ease. Mark DuPont. James approached, his voice steady but laced with an unmistakable edge. Mark looked up, his smile fading slightly as he assessed James. And you are? James Walker. Emily's husband. Well, soon-to-be ex-husband. Mark's composure slipped for a moment, a flicker of concern passing over his features before he regained his smug assurance. Ah, Mr. Walker. Emily mentioned you might not take things well. Did she also mention she stole from me? That she's a criminal? James's voice was low, a controlled growl of anger. Mark's smile returned, thin and cold. Emily needed a way out. I provided that. What she chose to do with her freedom is hardly my concern. James leaned in, his presence imposing. You're part of this, DuPont. And I will make sure you both regret it. Mark raised an eyebrow, unfazed. Threats are unbecoming, Mr. Walker. You should take care to direct your anger where it's due. I plan to. You'll see just how much, James promised, his tone dark as the Parisian night. He left the cafe with his heart pounding, his resolve hardening. This was just the beginning. James had laid the groundwork for his revenge. It would be thorough, it would be legal, and it would be devastating. As he walked back into the chill of the early evening, James felt a grim satisfaction settle over him. Emily and her lover had chosen their path, and now, they would learn the cost of crossing James Walker. The game of cat and mouse had just begun, and he was no ordinary adversary. James's next steps were calculated with precision, each move designed to tighten the noose around Emily in Mark's recklessness. His first destination was the law office of an old college friend, now a sharp-witted attorney specializing in financial fraud. The law office, a high-rise with sweeping views of the city, felt unnervingly calm as James entered. He was immediately ushered into a sleek, glass-walled conference room where his friend, Darren, awaited. James, this sounds serious. Lay it out for me, Darren said, his demeanor professional yet concerned. James laid the folder of bank documents on the table. Emily took out loans in my name, large sums. And she's fled to Paris with her accomplice, he explained, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions. Darren flipped through the documents, his brows furrowing. Forgery, identity theft, possibly even conspiracy. We have a strong case to freeze her accounts, maybe even get an international hold through Interpol if we play this right. That's exactly what I want. I need to stop her before she drains the assets entirely. Darren nodded, tapping a pen against his chin thoughtfully. I'll draft the necessary paperwork. We'll need to move fast, get a court order to freeze all her financial activities. I'll also contact the local authorities in Paris. If she's using the money there, we might catch her in the act. Gratitude mingled with James's resolve. Thank you, Darren. I knew I could count on you. As Darren set the legal machinery in motion, James's next move was to deal with the bank formally. He met with the bank's fraud department, outlining the deceit and providing all the necessary evidence. The bank manager was cooperative, shocked by the extent of the breach, and promised full support. Mr. Walker, we'll assist in any way we can. I'm truly sorry this happened under our watch, the manager assured him, shaking his head in dismay. With the legal and financial avenues secured, James's thoughts turned once more to Mark, the man who had facilitated his wife's betrayal. It was time for a more direct confrontation. He found Mark again at the same cafe, this time prepared to strike harder. As Mark sipped his espresso, unaware, James approached with a cold, hard smile. Enjoying your coffee, Mark? Might be your last in peace for a while, James began, his tone menacing. Mark looked up, annoyance flickering across his face. Back again, Mr. Walker. What is it this time? More threats? No, just facts. Emily's assets are being frozen as we speak. And there's a potential criminal investigation on the way. How long do you think you can protect her, or yourself, for that matter? Mark's facade cracked, his usual confidence slipping. You don't know what you're dealing with. Emily and I know exactly what I'm dealing with, James cut him off sharply. And I know that when the authorities start digging, they won't stop at Emily. You're as complicit as she is. Mark set his coffee down, his posture stiffening. You think you can scare me into submission? I have connections, Walker. This won't go the way you think. James leaned in closer, his gaze unyielding. Watch me. You two picked the wrong man to cross. Leaving Mark rattled in the cafe behind, James felt the first twinge of true vindication. His network of legal traps was set, and it was only a matter of time before Emily and Mark faced the consequences of their actions. The chase was on, and James was leading the hunt. James sat in his dimly lit office, the only illumination coming from his computer screen displaying a live feed from Paris. It had been 2 months since he set his revenge in motion, and tonight, everything was poised to come to a head. His contacts in Paris had been worth their weight in gold, providing the exact location where Emily and Mark planned to celebrate their deceit, ironically, at an upscale gallery showcasing themes of loyalty and trust. He had orchestrated his finale meticulously. With the legal groundwork laid, all assets frozen, and Mark's shady financial history leaked to the right people, it was only a matter of pushing the first domino. James picked up his phone and dialed the Paris police. Bonsoir, I would like to report a suspected illegal financial activity at the Art Loyalty Gallery on Rue de Seine. The individuals involved are likely armed and dangerous. The line buzzed with the confirmation of the dispatch. James hung up, his heartbeat accelerating not with fear, but anticipation. He then sent a quick, anonymous tip to a couple of influential Parisian journalists about a high-profile arrest about to unfold. As he watched the live feed, police cars converged on the gallery. The camera zoomed in as officers entered, and within minutes, chaos erupted inside as shouts echoed even through the muted feed. James's phone buzzed, an incoming video call from Mark, his face appearing desperate and disheveled. James. What have you done? Mark hissed, his eyes darting around, likely seeking an escape route. You seem surprised, Mark. It's merely the consequence of your own actions, James replied coolly, the satisfaction evident in his tone. This is madness, James. You've destroyed everything. Mark's voice was a mix of anger and panic. Exactly as you did to me. I'm just returning the favor, James stated simply. The call ended abruptly as Mark was forcibly detained by the police, the scene playing out on James's screen. A few moments later, Emily appeared in the feed, her face a mask of shock and betrayal as she too was handcuffed. James didn't bother to call her. Watching her downfall was a silent, sweet victory. His revenge was complete, his former love and her accomplice would now face the full consequences of their betrayal. The gallery was soon swarming with reporters, the scandal making live headlines. James watched, a deep sense of relief washing over him. His life could finally move forward, free of the deceit that had weighed him down. Days later, the news reported that Emily and Mark had been charged with multiple counts of fraud and money laundering. Their trial was swift, the evidence overwhelming. Both were sentenced to significant time, their futures irrevocably tainted by their crimes. James had one last task. In the quiet of his office, he penned a letter to Emily, though he knew he would never send it. Emily. In your pursuit of freedom, you chose deceit over truth, betrayal over love. I gave you justice, not out of hatred, but out of necessity. Our paths will never cross again, and while I reclaim my life, I hope you find redemption in yours. Goodbye forever. James. With that, James closed this chapter of his life, the screens going dark around him. He stood, looking out of his office window at the bustling city below, its lights a testament to new beginnings. His heart was lighter, his path clear. The final echoes of his past faded into the night, and he stepped forward, free at last.